Is there a tectonic shift in India-China relations? Government of India now saying that China sees India as re-emergence of a global power, of two global powers. Now, after a ceremonial welcome at the Great Hall of People, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Chinese counterpart, Premier Li Keqiang, several important agreements were signed between the two countries. India and China signed an agreement on railways, education exchange program, mining, space cooperation, tourism. An India-China think tank will come up. These are amongst several others that have been agreed upon. Now, addressing a joint statement, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that these talks were candid, constructive and friendly. He reinstated that maintaining peace and tranquility along the line of actual control is very important, both for India and for China, and that a verification of the line of actual control is essential. Prime Minister Modi spoke of a consultative mechanism on cooperation in trade negotiations between the two countries. An MOU was signed on establishing an India-China think tank forum. Modi also outlined various agreements signed and the way forward as far as this relationship is concerned.
Our conversations were candid, constructive and friendly. We covered all issues, including those that trouble smooth development of our relations. I stress the need for China to reconsider its approach on some of the issues that hold us back from realizing full potential of our partnership. I suggested that China should take a strategic and long-term view of our relations. We both reiterated our strong commitment to make all efforts to maintain peace and tranquility in the border region. I found sensitivity to our concerns on these issues and interest in further intensifying confidence-building measures. I also reiterated the importance of clarification of line of actual control in this regard. Our relationship has been complex in recent decades, but we have a historic responsibility to turn this relationship into a source of strength for each other and a force of good for the world. We are committed to set a new direction between the two largest Asian countries. I believe that my discussion with President Xi and Premier Li have advanced our relationship.
Managing editor Rahul Kanwal has been on top of this story. He joins me live from Beijing for more. Rahul, the Prime Minister said it's a very complex relationship that has to be turned into a source of strength. Good words, but if we were to talk about specifics, map that shows Kashmir and Arunachal as not as part of India, a stapled visa, Pakistan's support, China's support to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir development projects. Any concrete movement on any of these, Rahul?
Gaurav, if someone is looking for a transformational breakthrough idea which would take India and China's relationship into the next realm, that hasn't happened during this visit, and that never really was on the cards either. What sources in the Ministry of External Affairs are telling us is that look at this as 24 baby steps taken together, adding up to one significant step. They've been able to keep the tensions low-key There hasn't been any major incursion for the last several months in the build-up to this big Modi visit. They're setting up more border posts between the two armies. There's a hotline between the two armies. There's army headquarters as well, which is quite significant. And Prime Minister Modi reiterated in no uncertain terms that the LSE needs to be defined. And he's also holding out a bait in some senses, because the Chinese want a pilot project on the high-speed rail corridor. The Chinese also expecting the industrial corridor, both in Vadodara and in Pune, to move much faster. And somehow India is being able to convey the point that if we're able to solve the border dispute, we will then roll out the red carpet for Chinese investment, explaining the context in which there is a sense of mistrust, there is a sense of not wanting to give Chinese companies full access, and that has to deal with the uncertainty and the trust deficit that's built up over the years. So that's the bait that the Prime Minister has held out. He hasn't been shy, Gaurav, in his conversations. He said so publicly, and even in private interactions from what we've been hearing, he's explained to both the President and the Premier of China what the problems were, hoping that there will be some resolution. But if you're expecting that on any of these issues, whether it is e-visas to Chinese tourists, whether it's real-time river data sharing agreement or forward movement on the border, that hasn't happened. 24 small steps, they're saying add these together, they add up to one significant step.
24 baby steps adding up to one big step. That's the way this relationship is being seen just as yet. Rahul, you were specifically talking about e-visas. Now, that was to be seen as a step forward. Also, the issue of stapled visas. Now, are we still trying to convince each other that they should remove the stapled visas and we should give the e-visas? No forward movement on that either?
You know, we've been speaking to a whole bunch of people in India's security apparatus and also in the Ministry of External Affairs, and the sense that we've been able to pick up is that the security establishment has red-carded the proposal for e-visas to Chinese tourists. They're dead set against it. The Ministry of External Affairs is pushing hard, suggesting that you know, there's no change in the security protocol. Only the manner in which these visas is handed out changes. It makes it easier for Chinese tourists to come in. They're saying that look at the number of Chinese tourists who are going all across the world. 3 lakh go to just the Maldives. If we were to allow these people to come in, it will be great for the Indian economy. The security establishment, because of the distrust that's been built up over years, dead set against it. So now the ball is firmly in the Prime Minister's court, and the Prime Minister has to take a political decision. But as I reiterated earlier, now the question is, will the Chinese give him something to show back to the Indian people, to show back to the opposition, to show back to Parliament about forward movement, which would justify taking such a big step? Because you can't take this big step and have a big Chinese incursion just the following week. That would be terrible for Modi politically. So he's tried to put some of that in context, explain how there could be forward movement, explain what he expected the Chinese side to do. However, in the briefing that just happened, Foreign Secretary Jaishankar, when asked about the e-visa, said that was a scheme we extended to some countries. China wasn't on it. That's the way it stays. That's just the Sarkari answer. The reality is the Chinese are very keen on trying to push for e-visas. They believe that will be a major breakthrough. They believe that will be a big confidence boosting measure, but India needs something to show back home before Prime Minister Modi can announce this. They haven't given up just yet on the idea of e-visas. That's part of Prime Minister's plan in terms of how he wants to make it easier for tourists the world over to come to India, China included, but they're looking for something to clutch on to which would justify giving this kind of a concession to the Chinese side.
Okay. Let's look at the positives that have come out of this meeting, these 2 days of very important meetings, earlier with President Xi Jinping and today with Premier Li Keqiang. Of the 24 agreements, if we were to talk about the boundary issue, that's one aspect. Mill-to-mill contact, a hotline, more border personnel, meeting points, all of that is a positive. As far as trade is concerned, a huge imbalance. How is that being addressed?
You know, that is a problem area. The Foreign Secretary was open enough to admit that the trade imbalance is a big problem. Now we know that there are access issues on both sides. Indian companies claim it's very difficult to be able to penetrate the Chinese markets. The Chinese companies have been saying that because of security concerns, their companies don't get the kind of not necessarily partial treatment, but just fair treatment, which is made available to other countries, and that really remains an issue. And remember, China has an imbalance in trade, not just with India, but virtually with every country that it trades with. But just in the case of India, because it's India's largest trading partner, and the trade deficit is about $44 billion, that's a yawning gap, a gap which the Prime Minister really needs to try and curtail. But you can sense on the Chinese side, Gaurav, a sense of impatience. They'd like to see things move faster. They were hoping that Modi would be able to move as fast across India as he was able to in Gujarat. President Xi yesterday referred to the Gujarat miracle, which they're hoping the Prime Minister will be able to extend. Well, one of the people we spoke to on the Chinese side says yesterday, in jest of course, said that in 19 days we were able to build a skyscraper in Beijing. From Alpha to Omega, 19 days they had a skyscraper up.
Yes.
In about a year, they haven't yet been able to acquire the land for the industrial corridor in Pune and Vadodara. Forget trying to build something there. Forget trying to get Chinese companies invest their money there. They haven't yet been able to acquire land. Now, we know the kind of problems the Prime Minister has been facing over the land acquisition bill, but this is not the way the Chinese are used to doing business. And at a time when they've got the money, at a time when the world is competing for their money, they're saying, you need to get your act in order if you want us to come and spend serious dollars investing in your economy.
Rahul Kamal, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. Keep tracking that story, Rahul. I will come back to you for more. Of course, India and China will open consulates in each other's country, in Chengdu and in Chennai. Of course, the rail corridor, the feasibility study for a high-speed rail network will be done between Delhi and Nagpur. That and much more we will continue to discuss.